Throughout my 25 metres of freestyle, there are numerous strengths, however, just as many inefficiencies. Today, throughout this video analysis, I'll break these down further in depth. To begin analysing, we will assess the stroke. To begin this analysis of the stroke, I will compare a professional freestyle stroke to that of my own. The first clear strength when comparing these two videos is that within my strokes, I follow through. Throughout this professional freestyle video, the importance of timing is highlighted. This reveals an inefficiency in my stroke, which is that when I am following through, I begin the next stroke while still completing the previous one. While comparing these two videos side by side, we can see that I put my arm correctly in the right angle position mid-stroke before spearing it into the water. Through this comparison, we can also see that after every 3 strokes, I continue swimming and take a breath. Another strength highlighted by this comparison is that before my hands are hitting the water, my hands are not completely flat and I dip my fingers downward to allow for a smooth transition into the water. Although my hands and fingers were in the correct position prior to hitting the water, my arm would not be fully extended. This meant that in this motion, my hands were hitting the water early and I couldn't get the most out of every stroke. So the strengths for my stroke were that I followed through, lifted my arm above the water to the correct angle, I took a breath every 3 strokes, and prior to hitting the water I dipped my fingers and hands for a smoother pull. So the stroke weaknesses were that I started the next stroke too early, meaning I couldn't effectively finish the last stroke as I started the next one while it was finishing, and I didn't extend my arm to the full length, meaning I couldn't get the full pull with each stroke. Now let's look at body position and movement. An early strength that we can identify is that my hip turns from side to side with each stroke. This allows my shoulder to get as high out of the water as possible, therefore assisting me by allowing me to get a maximum reach out of each stroke. Another strength with my body position and movement is that to maintain a streamlined shape, while completing my strokes, my head remains down when I am not breathing. An ineffectiveness highlighted by this comparison is that as I'm not kicking as hard as I can, my bottom half begins to sink into the water, slowing me down. To recap my body movement and position, there was strength in my head position and my hip movement. However, not so much in my hip position, making it difficult to maintain a streamlined shape. The streamlined position is extremely crucial in freestyle. Although my head is down, allowing a front-on streamline position. As I'm not kicking as hard as I can, my bottom half begins to sink down, creating a diagonal position instead of a streamline, therefore slowing me down. Now to analyse the last movement of the freestyle stroke, the kicking movement. To ensure an effective kicking movement, it has to be lateral or horizontal. A strength of my kicking movement is that when I'm turning for strokes, my hips turn, making my kicks horizontal, allowing me to have a maintained source of power while completing freestyle. An ineffectiveness within my kicking is that I am more flopping my legs than kicking them against the resistance of the water. This means I have decreased power and makes it increasingly difficult to maintain a streamlined shape. Furthermore, some of my kicks go too high, meaning that my feet go above the water. This results in a more ineffective kick and less power. So to recap the kicking movement, my strengths are that my kicks adjust with my hips from lateral to horizontal to ensure a maintained source of power. However, my weaknesses are that I have to focus my strength on my kicks to ensure that my legs aren't moving with no power and that they are actually kicking against the resistance of the water. Furthermore, I need to ensure that my feet remain under the water to make sure I have an effective kick with increased power. Therefore, through this analysis and a side-by-side comparison with a professional freestyle swimmer, we see that strength in all movements combine to create an effective freestyle stroke, and that through analysis we can identify what our strengths and weaknesses are to help build an overall effective freestyle stroke. Thank you for listening.